The little red LED on the card reader did not just blink, it sneered. It was a sharp electronic rejection, echoing louder than the hum of the air conditioning unit overhead, which had been rattling like a dying lung for 4 years because Director Harlan Vance preferred spending maintenance budget on luxury golf retreats to Cabo. I did not panic. Panic is for people who have mortgages they cannot afford and secrets they cannot bury. I just stood there, holding my plastic lanyard, looking at the glass doors of Stratos Global Solutions like I was inspecting a crime scene that had not happened yet. The glass reflected my face, 53 years of practiced neutrality, eyes the color of a stormy Atlantic, and a posture that said middle management but meant federal ballistics and forensic accounting expert. Card trouble, Gavin? The voice came from behind me, dripping with false sympathy. It was Clint Doyle, our new chief of security. The title was a joke. Doyle was a disgraced former cop who got bounced from municipal police force for excessive enthusiasm and now spent days patrolling a hallway of accountants like he was storming a battlefield. He smelled of cheap cologne and deep insecurity. "It is red, Doyle," I said, my voice flat. "Usually means bill was not paid or someone pressed wrong button. Director Vance wants a word," Doyle said, hooking thumbs into tactical belt. He stood like he was packing a heavy cannon. Escorted entry only. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw sweat beading on his upper lip, the way his eyes darted to receptionists then back to me. He was performing. This was executive theater. If you enjoy watching a grown man try to intimidate someone who knows where corporate bodies are buried, you might want to pay close attention because this train wreck was just leaving the station, led the way. "Brave soldier," I said. His jaw tightened, that little muscle jumping in his cheek like a trapped insect. He swiped his master badge, a gold-plated monstrosity he paid for himself, and heavy doors hissed open. The office smelled of stale coffee, ozone from copiers, and low-grade despair of 200 people, realizing weekend was still 4 days away. I walked past rows of cubicles. Heads popped up like gophers. Clara from accounting looked away. Dave from logistics found his stapler fascinating. They knew. In a corporate ecosystem, smell of fresh blood travels faster than a reply-all email. Doyle marched me past my office, a modest 10 by 10 box where I spent 14 years pretending to care about compliance policy and diversity seminars, straight toward mahogany double doors at the end of hallway. The director's suite. Harlan Vance was sitting behind a desk, costing more than my first 3 cars combined. He was flanked by 2 suits I did not recognize, corporate legal counsel looking like they were carved out of soap and cynicism. Vance was 54, tanned the color of a well-oiled baseball glove, with teeth that were blindingly white. "Gavin," Vance said, not standing up. He gestured to a leather chair lower than his own, a classic corporate power move. I remained standing. "Harlan," I replied. "Doyle here seems to think I am a flight risk. He is breathing down my neck so hard, I am worried he is going to propose." Doyle bristled by door. Vance offered a tight smile. "We have decided your services are no longer required at Stratos." Effective immediately. The silence that followed was heavy. I let it stretch. I wanted to see who would twitch first. It was lawyer on left. He shifted weight nervously and tapped a gold pen against his pad. "Tinnel restructuring?" I asked, throwing them the bone they expected. "Exactly," Vance said, relieved I was playing by their script. "We are pivoting your role. Your compliance methods are legacy, archaic. We need fresh eyes on corporate governance. Someone who understands modern agility required in federal defense contracting. Modern agility. Executive code for someone who would not notice Vance was funneling 7 figures into a shell company account in Caymans every quarter." "I see," I said calmly. "And what about 14 years of institutional knowledge, federal audit trails, and delicate relationship with Department of Labor?" "We have it covered," Vance said, waving his hand. "Human Resources has your severance package ready. Standard 2 weeks of pay provided you sign comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. A non-disclosure agreement, of course. They wanted to buy my silence for 14 years of fraud with equivalent of a used hatchback. I do not think I will be signing that," I said softly. Vance's fake smile faltered. "It is not optional if you want severance check, Gavin." "I do not want check, Harlan. I want to know if you are sure about this. Because once I walk out that door, I cannot protect you from what comes next." Vance laughed out loud, sharp and ugly. Protect me? You plan fire drills, Gavin. You organize potlucks. You are a glorified hall monitor. Stratos will survive without your protection. Doyle, escort him out. He has 5 minutes to collect personal effects. No electronics. Understood, Doyle said, grabbing my elbow. I pulled my arm away firmly. Do not touch me, Doyle. I looked Vance in eyes one last time, memorizing his arrogance. I wanted to remember how smug he looked sitting on mahogany throne, thinking he was king of jungle. He had no idea he was just a termite in a structure already fumigated. Goodbye, Harlan, I said. As Doyle marched me back through gauntlet of staring coworkers, I felt no humiliation. I felt a cold, sharp shard of anticipation in my chest, precise feeling of a trained sniper adjusting for windage. They thought they were taking out trash. They did not realize they were unplugging containment unit. I walked out into parking lot, sun glaring off asphalt. Doyle stood at glass doors watching me get into my car. I reached deep into coat pocket and touched cold metal of my real badge, the one tucked inside leather wallet with silver sticker on back. Enjoy victory lap, boys. I whispered to empty car as I started engine. Because you just triggered apocalypse. My apartment is a sterile sanctuary. No pets, no motivational wall quotes, no unnecessary clutter, just mid-century modern furniture and stillness making a monk nervous. It is exact opposite of chaotic mess of incompetence I left behind at Stratos Global Solutions. I kicked off dress shoes and walked straight to guest bedroom. To anyone visiting, it was a spare room with generic bed and sailboat painting. But if you slide wardrobe 4 inches to left and press specific knot in hardwood floorboard, a hidden panel in closet creates a faint click. I pulled false back of closet open. It was not a sci-fi command center with floating holograms. It was paper, storage boxes filled with meticulous paper records. Hard drives are seizable by corrupt warrants. Cloud servers can be wiped or hacked. But paper is heavy, boring, permanent. Nobody wants to sift through 14 years of physical shipping invoices, manifest logs, travel vouchers. Nobody except me. I pulled out thick black binder labeled Unmapped Asset, A7329. This was my life's work. Not compliance training seminars I pretended to run, but shadow audit I had been conducting since day. Harlan Vance first charged a $7,500 consulting fee to a phantom company that did not exist. I sat on hardwood floor, binder heavy in lap. I booted up personal laptop, custom rig with military-grade encryption, strong enough to give network intelligence analysts a migraine. I logged into backdoor access portal I installed in Stratos server architecture back in 2020, disguised as a routine printer driver update. I watched live system logs scroll across the screen. They were already scrubbing data. Predictable, I muttered. I could see Chief Doyle's user credentials clumsily fumbling through human resources database, deleting my active employee status and erasing email archives. He was using a digital sledgehammer when he should have used a scalpel. He was deleting index records of files, but not forensic metadata of deletion itself. Every time he clicked delete, he left a permanent digital footprint, screaming evidence tampering. The real beauty was what they missed. 8 months ago, I noticed Vance was getting exceptionally greedy. He was no longer skimming off routine vendor contracts. He was gouging massive chunks out of federal defense logistics grants. He established a new primary vendor, Apex Logistics, to handle freight for a multi-million-dollar defense contract. Apex Logistics was nothing more than Vance's brother-in-law, operating out of a post office box in Delaware. I knew if I moved too early, they would shred paper trail. So I created a ghost. I navigated to vendor registry on screen. There it was, buried deep in secondary subcontractor tier, Veridian Tactical Supplies. Veridian did not supply hardware. I created corporate entity using exact shell company templates Vance favored. I routed contract paperwork through his rubber stamp approval queue. He signed it without reading a single page, just as he signed everything promising a corporate kickback. Here was legal trap. Veridian Tactical Supplies was only vendor and system, bound by Federal Oversight Regulation Clause 44B. Under federal commercial law, including Title 17 U.S.C. Section 106 for proprietary technical specifications, and Title 35 U.S.C. Section 271 governing defense manufacturing patents. Clause 44B mandated an automated external mirror backup of all corporate communications involving vendor. By signing that contract, Vance legally authorized a redundant federal server to capture every email, invoice, and internal memo he transmitted regarding defense project. He thought he was approving another slush fund. He was actually signing a warrant for his own digital wiretap. I checked live status of Veridian's server. It was capturing data flawlessly. A new encrypted email appeared from Vance to his private defense lawyer, timestamped 30 minutes ago. Subject: compliance officer is gone. Body: we are clear. Doyle escorted him out. Scrub server logs, just in case, but he knows nothing about Cayman accounts. We are safe. I took a slow sip of water. The arrogance was breathtaking. He truly believed because I organized office holiday parties and wore modest cardigans, I was incapable of understanding complex corporate fraud schemes. He thought compliance officer meant helpless doormat. I reached for burner phone and dialed an unlisted number. It rang once. Dottie? Gravelly voice answered. This was Handler 7, my direct contact at Department of Justice. I am out, I said cleanly. They terminated my cover. 7 asked. No, I replied, running finger down spine of black binder. Arrogant. They are cleaning house because they are about to execute a major capital transfer. They think I was dead weight. Do we pull trigger now? 7 inquired. Not yet, I said. Anger in my chest was cold, dense, solid. Geological pressure of a tectonic plate waiting to shift. They need to feel safe. I want them to relax and celebrate. Let them spend afternoon high-fiving in executive suite. What is your timeline? 7 asked. Give me 72 hours, I stated. Under Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act 29 U.S.C. Section 2101, as well as federal breach of fiduciary duty doctrines, their sudden mass layoff of compliance staff opens them to immediate asset freezes. I just need to make sure rats run straight into traps. You are walking on thin ice, Gavin, 7 warned. Their biggest concern right now is filing my termination paperwork, I interrupted. They do not know I built maze they are running in. 72 hours. Then we bring hammer down. 5 years ago at annual Defense Contractors Gala, Vance boasted while 4 scotches deep. It is a volume game, boys. Margins are in logistics expediting fees. You charge Uncle Sam $1,200 for a folding chair because it had to be tactically deployed. It is not fraud if they sign check. When I asked about reclassifying janitorial staff, Vance laughed and called me a vault, saying I was not smart enough to ask questions. That was the moment it became personal. He did not see a human being. He saw an appliance. I closed laptop with soft click. You should have checked my background file, Harlan, I whispered. I went to Quantico for forensic accounting. It was time for Phase 2. Wednesday morning brought heavy rain, a relentless gray downpour, turning Corporate Park into a giant puddle. I sat at kitchen table, sipping dark coffee, watching digital feed from Stratos Network. Vance had brought in external cleaners. System network traffic was spiking erratically, digital equivalent of panicked men, running through office with document shredders. Clara, my insider in executive accounting, sent me a message through an encrypted application disguised as a word puzzle game. Clara, it is complete chaos here. Doyle is interrogating junior analysts, demanding to know if you ever backed up files onto external flash drives. Me. Tell him I used to eat flash drives with my morning oatmeal. Good for fiber, Clara. Ha! Seriously though, they brought in an outside IT consultant. He is wearing a crypto shirt and looks completely out of his depth. Outside IT consultant. Perfect. Vance hired a discount freelance hacker to clean federal servers. I accessed internal hallway security camera feed. I still possessed active credentials for second-floor camera node because Stratosite failed to update default administrator access keys in 8 years. On screen, I watched a young man in a hoodie connect a laptop directly into central switchboard. He was attempting to execute a brute force deletion script on primary database. System performance dropped by 40% instantly. I shook my head watching screen output. He was not wiping data. He was merely deleting directory path shortcuts while leaving raw data blocks intact on storage arrays, perfectly preserved for federal forensic recovery. But letting them believe files were destroyed was far more useful. Arrogance is a predator's greatest vulnerability. Doyle walked into camera frame, pacing nervously and shouting at consultant. I could not hear audio, but Doyle's body language was pure panic. He kept making chopping motions with hands, demanding a total wipe. My phone buzzed again. Clara, Doyle is calling former employees. He just called Dave, who left 3 years ago, asking if you ever mentioned offshore bank accounts or Delaware shell corporations. I smiled. Doyle was doing my investigative work for me. By frantically calling former staff and asking hyper-specific questions about offshore accounts, he was broadcasting to entire industry that Stratos was hiding illicit money. Keep digging, Doyle, I thought. You are digging your own legal grave. I decided to accelerate meltdown. I opened a terminal window and executed a passive script authored 2 weeks prior. Script generated a sudden localized burst of data transfer inside a long dormant directory on shared server, labeled Archive 2020 Personal. Folder contained nothing more than electronic receipt for office pizza party from 4 years ago. But to amateur consultant monitoring network traffic, sudden spike looked like massive unauthorized data exfiltration in real time. On security camera feed, IT consultant jumped out of chair. He pointed frantically at monitor. Doyle rushed over, neck turning violent shade of red. They panicked. They genuinely believed I was inside local server, extracting confidential files at exact second. I was sitting 5 miles away eating buttered toast. Doyle grabbed radio and began screaming orders. Consultant typed feverishly, trying to sever incoming connection. In sheer panic, he initiated a full hard drive network lockout protocol. Entire Stratos Global Solutions infrastructure went dark. Email servers crashed, VoIP phones disconnected, shared databases locked out every user. Consultant effectively unplugged his own company. I leaned back in chair. End of Act 1. Now they were completely blind, unable to communicate, unable to trade documents, and unable to process outgoing wire transfers. My phone buzzed. Clara, why did entire network collapse? Panic in server room. Consultant just pulled plug on himself. Vance must be thrilled. Clara. He screamed so loud glass in office vibrated. While running around in dark trying to restore power, I prepared physical disclosure package, a plain manila envelope with no return address. Inside, I placed a single printed document. Original Viridian Tactical Supplies vendor agreement bearing Harlan Vance's signature in blue ink, with Clause 44B highlighted in bright yellow marker detailing mandatory federal data, mirroring. I addressed envelope directly to Chief Compliance Officer at Lockheed Defense Systems, Stratos's primary prime contractor generating 80% of corporate revenue. I sealed envelope. Phase 3 was active. By 10 in morning, news hit specialized defense industry portals. Headline appeared on the Federal Ledger, Midwest defense contractor under investigation for ghost subcontractors and inflated logistics charges. It did not explicitly name Stratos, but quoted sources close to federal oversight and included redacted invoice for tactical folding chairs, billed at $1,200 each. From a booth at coffee shop across street from Stratos headquarters, I watched immediate fallout through binoculars. Glass lobby was an ant farm of panicked executives. At 10:15, Harlan Vance stormed out of executive elevator, phone pressed to ear, tie crooked, shouting at public relations manager. My burner phone rang. Handler 7. We have movement, 7 reported. Lockheed formally suspends Stratos' subcontractor status pending full forensic audit. All pending payments frozen. Vance is trying to reach political contacts. None are answering. I watched Doyle run through lobby carrying a stack of paper. Are you ready for extraction? 7 asked. We can bring you into federal building for formal deposition. Not yet, I replied calm as ice. I want them to stew in panic a bit longer. I want to see them turn on each other. They suspect a disgruntled ex-employee. They have no idea I am an active DOJ asset. If they knew that, they would be fleeing to non-extradition countries right now. It is not revenge, 7. It is mathematical justice. I hung up. Across street, I saw Clara Palmer walk out of Stratos glass doors carrying purse and desk plant. She stopped on sidewalk, looked back at building, and spat deliberately onto pavement. Vance tried to frame accounting for missing 7 figures. I texted Clara immediately. If you want federal immunity under Whistleblower Protection Act, meet Agent Miller at downtown Federal Building. Her reply was instantaneous, on my way. Thank you, Gavin. Vance's wall was crumbling. His chief accountant was about to sing to grand jury. By Thursday afternoon, it was time to drop curtain. I parked sedan in my old reserved space in Stratos parking lot. Nobody dared park there, as if shadow of 14-year tenure still claimed asphalt. Rain cleared, leaving air crisp and cold. Heart rate was steady, 60 beats per minute. I felt absolute, pristine clarity. This was moment I calculated through hundreds of hours of silent document analysis. I pushed through heavy glass entrance doors. Sarah, young receptionist, looked up from desk. Her eyes widened in sheer shock. She instantly grabbed desk phone. "He is back," she whispered frantically into receiver. "Doyle, he just walked into lobby." I did not pause. I walked deliberately toward center of marble atrium. Chief Doyle came bursting out of elevator bank like a bull charging a red cape. He was drenched in sweat, tactical vest askew, face flushed deep purple. "You," Doyle roared, pointing trembling finger at me. "You are trespassing on private corporate property. I have a temporary restraining order being processed right now. You leave this building immediately or I will physically throw you into street." His voice boomed off high marble walls. He wanted dramatic confrontation to demonstrate to terrified staff watching from second-floor glass balconies that he was still in command. I stopped in middle of lobby floor. I did not raise my voice. I simply stood there with hands resting inside pockets of overcoat. "I would advise against laying a hand on me, Doyle," I said. My voice was quiet, but carried effortlessly through silent room. "I am giving you 3 seconds," Doyle shouted, advancing on me, hand hovering over taser holster. "Get out. I am here to return your security clearance badge," I stated calmly. "I do not want your trash. Get out." He lunged forward, reaching out to grab my collar. "Do not touch me," I said. It was not a plea. It was a cold, authoritative command that stopped him dead in tracks. Something in tone hit law enforcement instincts. Primal brain inside him realized, far too late, that he was standing in front of an apex predator. Slowly and deliberately, I withdrew right hand from coat pocket. I was holding heavy black leather badge wallet. "You demanded my badge on Tuesday, Doyle," I said. "Here it is." I flipped leather wallet open. Doyle sneered, "What is this?" "A fake badge." He snatched it from my hand and looked down. He froze solid. Color drained from face in a fraction of a second. Shining in light was heavy gold federal shield, surmounted by American eagle, deeply engraved with words. United States Department of Justice. Senior Special Agent. Doyle stared at gold badge, mouth hanging open. Eyes bulged as brain struggled desperately to reconcile Gavin, mild-mannered compliance manager, with high-ranking federal covert agent. "Turn it over, Doyle," I instructed softly. With trembling fingers, he flipped leather wallet. Affixed to reverse side was reflective silver hologram sticker bearing official seal of Inspector General and registration code. Asset A7329. Covert federal operative. Do not detain. Federal obstruction penalties apply under Title 18 U.S.C. Doyle made a strangled, choking sound in throat. He dropped leather wallet as if it suddenly turned into white-hot piece of iron. Heavy badge hit marble floor with loud metallic clatter. He physically recoiled 3 steps backward, hands raised in terror. I did not know," Doyle stammered, voice dropping 2 octaves into pitiful squeak. "Director Vance. Vance told us you were just an administrative hall monitor." "Harlan Vance lies about everything, Doyle," I said, bending down smoothly to pick up badge, wiping speck of dust off leather. "You should have verified claims before participating in federal cover-up." Entire lobby was dead silent. Sarah, receptionist, had both hands pressed against mouth. Executives and accountants were staring down from upper balconies, frozen in total shock. "Is Vance in office?" I asked. Doyle nodded numbly. He could barely breathe. "Good," I said. "Go upstairs and tell him he has exactly 60 minutes. 60 minutes for what?" Doyle croaked. 60 minutes to call United States Attorney for Southern District and offer full confession, I explained calmly, tucking badge back into coat. If he confesses now, he might secure a sentence in minimum security federal facility. If he forces us to breach office and drag him out, he will serve 30 years in maximum security. I turned back on him and walked toward entrance doors. "Aja Prescott!" Doyle called out, voice shaking with desperation. "What about me? I was only following executive orders." I stopped near glass doors and looked back over shoulder. "Following illegal orders has not been a valid legal defense since 1945. "Doyle," I replied cold as steel. "You had better hope orders were documented in writing." I stepped out into crisp afternoon air. Phase 4 complete. Vance was boxed in. Now came final execution. I did not leave premises. I sat on stone bench in plaza, watching front entrance. Exactly 30 minutes later, federal convoy arrived. 4 black armored sport utility vehicles pulled up to curb in absolute unison. 12 federal agents wearing tactical jackets displaying FBI and DOJ insignia emerged efficiently. Leading team was Agent Broderick, veteran prosecutor who looked like he never smiled in life. Broderick spotted me on Plaza Bench and gave a single firm nod. I stood up and joined entry team. We walked into lobby as a unified tactical unit. Doyle had locked himself in ground floor storage room, secure all server rooms and emergency exits. Broderick ordered team. Nobody leaves this building with storage media. Seize all primary hard drives immediately. 6 tactical agents moved toward IT department. Broderick, myself, and 4 armed agents entered executive elevator. Ride to top floor was silent. When elevator doors opened, absolute chaos met us. Corporate staff frantically shoved documents into heavy industrial paper shredders. "Federal agents, stand away from all machinery," Broderick shouted. His voice echoed like a thunderclap down corridor. Shredders stopped instantly. Every staff member raised hands. We marched down hallway directly to double mahogany doors of director's suite. Doors were locked from inside. Broderick looked at me. "Key?" "He changed locks on Tuesday," I said. "Breach it." Broderick signaled a heavy breach agent on right. One violent kick near door handle shattered mahogany frame. Double doors swung wide open. Harlan Vance was sitting behind massive desk. He was not shredding paper. He was staring blankly at wall. His expensive silk tie was thrown onto floor. An open bottle of aged scotch sat on desk, half empty. He looked up at us as we entered, eyes bloodshot. He looked 15 years older than 72 hours ago. "You," Vance rasped, voice dry, staring at me. "You were a leak inside my company." "I was not a leak, Harlan," I said, stepping into office. "I was plumbing." Agent Broderick placed heavy aluminum case onto conference table and unlatched dual locks. Inside were neatly stacked volumes of financial audits, forensic server logs, wiretap transcripts, physical bank records. "This binder," I said, pointing to thick black volume, "contains every fraudulent transaction executed since 2012. Every inflated logistics invoice, every shell company transferred to Delaware and Caymans, every kickback paid to corrupt municipal zoning officials, and every dollar siphoned off federal defense contracts under guise of emergency expediting fees." Vance's face twitched violently. "You cannot prove criminal intent," he stammered. "It was accounting errors. Compliance team handled documentation." "We have your voice on tape, Harlan," I said softly. 5 years ago at Defense Contractors Gala. It is not fraud if they sign check, remember? "We have digital recording from my concealed microphone." Vance's skin turned ashen gray. He remembered. "And we have Clara Palmer's sworn testimony," I added. "She provided grand jury with private ledgers and off-the-books travel vouchers 30 minutes ago." Vance collapsed back into leather chair. All arrogance, executive bravado, smug entitlement drained out like air from popped balloon. He was no longer titan of defense contracting. He was just a pathetic corporate thief caught in broad daylight raid. "Who are you?" he whispered, looking up in absolute bewilderment. "You organized Secret Santa. You brought donuts Friday mornings." "I am Senior Special Agent Gavin Prescott. Acid A7329, I stated firmly. "And decaf coffee you drank for 14 years was a tactical choice to keep blood pressure manageable until ready to indict you." Agent Broderick stepped forward, unfolding steel handcuffs. "Harlan Vance, you are under arrest for federal wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud United States government, and felony dissipation of corporate assets under federal statutory guidelines." As Broderick pulled Vance's arms behind back and clicked cuffs into place, Vance stared at me one final time, confusion in his eyes. "Why?" Vance asked, voice cracking. "Why stay undercover 14 years? "Because," I said, leaning over desk, "I wanted to see how high you would build empire before I removed foundation." They marched Vance out of suite in handcuffs. I remained in office alone for a few moments, looking around mahogany walls, signed sports memorabilia, panoramic view of city. It all smelled of rotten greed. I walked over to desk, picked up half-empty scotch bottle, poured remaining liquor into potted ficus plant in corner. "Drink up." "Harlan," I muttered. "It is on house." Next 3 hours passed in a blur of federal procedure. Strato's building was designated active federal crime scene. Yellow evidence tape sealed off offices. Federal technicians cataloged servers, boxed hard drives, secured paper files. I sat in small conference room with Agent Broderick and representative from Department of Justice Inspector General Office. All defense contracts with Stratos formally terminated. Inspector General representative reported. Lockheed severed corporate ties. Stratos stock frozen. Company placed into federal receivership by morning. Good, I said. I felt intense physical fatigue settling in. Adrenaline sustaining me 72 hours faded, leaving quiet exhaustion. You executed exceptional operation, Gavin, Broderick said, pushing thick manila folder across table. We have a new long-term assignment for you. A major aerospace contractor in Virginia showed significant financial irregularities in drone development budget. We need a seasoned deep-cover compliance auditor. I looked at folder on table, then pushed it gently back across to Broderick. No, I said cleanly. Broderick frowned. Gavin, you are one of highest-performing forensic assets. I am retiring, I stated. You are 53, Gavin, Broderick noted. You have years of service left. I have 14 years accrued leave and 25 years federal service. I corrected him. I am done sitting in cubicles pretending to care about corporate potlucks while listening to corrupt executives brag about stealing tax dollars. Broderick's studied face, long moment, slowly nodded and closed file folder. I cannot say I blame you. 14 years undercover is a brutal deployment. We are lifting public press embargo in 2 hours, Inspector General Representative noted. Do you wish to be named lead investigative asset? No, I replied without hesitation. Keep me cited as an anonymous senior federal official. I do not want public notoriety. I just want quiet life. I walked out of conference room and through main office floor. Bustling noise of corporate work, completely gone. Phones silent, printers dark. Staff stood in quiet groups. Walked past small office, reached inside, pulled down small desktop clock, tossed into recycling bin. 14 years undercover work finished. Cover identity of Gavin, quiet compliance guy, retired forever. I took elevator down to lobby. Standing near glass exit doors, holding small cardboard box containing personal items, was former Chief Doyle. He was fired immediately by federal receiver. Save it, Doyle, I said calmly. You were just a bully who backed wrong executive. I reached into coat, pulled out official federal credentials wallet, held it out to him. Give this to Broderick's team when they finish upstairs, I instructed. Tell them resignation paperwork is filed. Doyle took wallet with trembling hands, holding by edges. As I opened glass doors, 2 federal agents escorted Harlan Vance out toward a waiting transport vehicle. Vance wore designer suit but wrists bound in heavy steel. He paused, seeing me standing in sunlight. Gavin, Vance called out, voice pathetic. Who is going to manage federal compliance audits now? I looked him dead in the eye and let out a quiet laugh. File a ticket with human resources, Harlan, I said. I turned and walked across parking lot to sedan. Sun shining brightly through clouds, reflecting off wet pavement. Air smelled fresh, clean, cold. Unlocked car, sat in driver's seat, rolled down window. No more fake compliance reports. No more corporate posturing. No more Harlan Vance. I started engine, pulled out a parking lot, merged onto open highway. Arrogance blinds powerful men every single time. Harlan Vance's greed destroyed his empire, while patience and a small silver sticker delivered absolute justice. True power is never loud or flashy. It is quiet, meticulous force waiting for perfect moment to strike.